hit the record button here. Hope everybody's doing okay today. I've had a busy day already, but I wanted to tell you all that the recording from the last class, the one last Thursday, I cannot get it to upload to Blackboard. I tried over and over again, and I come to find out that the little video that I showed, the two, I don't know, it was something that came off of YouTube that was already copyrighted from somewhere, and apparently it won't let me reproduce it because it's copyrighted. So from now on, I'm going to try to remember that when I show a video, I'll pause the recording, but the videos will still be on Blackboard. You'll just have to go look at them separately if you want to see them again. So I'm sorry, I'm going to see if I can get somebody to recapture part of the video from last week, the recording from last week, but from now on. It's interesting though, that it was the thing where the people were all sitting around the table and arguing with each other and all. So it was copyrighted, and most things are copyrighted, but for that one, it got blocked. So I can't upload it. So I'll try to do my best to keep that from happening again for you, and I'll just put the videos on there separately. So that's weird because if it's already on YouTube, why won't it let me put it on YouTube so that I can download it? So it makes no sense. We will do our best. I see a few folks in Keysville, and I think I see a couple folks in Emporia. We're going to do our thing today with our chapter 4. And then we remind you all that Thursday is the test. Okay? So the test is on the first 4 chapters. It will be done on the computer. We'll talk about that at the end of the class to make sure everybody's got arrangements for that. Okay, so we're going to start today with taking a look at what's on Blackboard. Again, we're under week 3. Okay, so just make sure you click on week 3 in Blackboard, and you'll see information about the chapter, which we're dealing with cultural differences in our communication. And we'll spend quite a bit of the chapter looking at different characteristics and beliefs of different countries and how we interact with each other. There's a little note about the test on there as well. So for your to-do list, again, chapter 4 we'll go over today. You do have a homework assignment similar to the ones that you've had for the other 3 chapters. You want to get that done before you take the test so that you'll have that to study by. So you will have 2 hours to complete the test. Don't think you're going to need that long for sure. You can use your notes, you can use your book, but you can't go out of a test and go to any other website or use any person to help you. All right, so for this week's materials, we're going to start off with the author's video again, just a tiny bit. I'll stop the recording or pause it anyway, just in case that's copyrighted. So, 1 second here. Okay, so stop the share. There we go. Get back here. We see from the author that he's a very big proponent of going out and learning about other cultures. And so much so that he actually took some time in life to live in China and get to understand the differences that take place there. Very, very smart decision. I find that a lot of people who are really making it, excuse me, in the business world are those that have exposed themselves to other cultures and spent some time in other countries. So if you do run across an opportunity to do that, highly suggest that you do. There are things through the school that can be done that would be very beneficial to you. If you can't even do that, get a chance to go to Disney World, go to Epcot. There's the international sector that gives you just a tiny bit of taste of cultures around the world, so you can at least be exposed a little bit to some of the differences that go on. So I really, some of the best things I've done in life is to travel to other countries, and I hope that you'll take the opportunity to do that along the way in your studies or early on in your lifetime, so that you'll get exposed to a lot of different ideas. Now, what I wanted to do was show you some of the differences that we might not be aware of and why it is so important for us to understand other cultures, especially when we are dealing business-wise with them, because we may unintentionally offend someone in a foreign country because we don't know their thoughts and their background and that sort of stuff. So once again, I'm going to pause the recording.
I have a question. It tells me.
There.
I've actually offended people in a different country because I didn't know what I was doing.
I'm sure we've all done that. And the problem is that we just don't know. We just don't know. But now we're in business situations where it's not only are we risking hurting someone's feelings or doing something that they don't approve of, we're actually jeopardizing our company's profits because we might do something that keeps them from having business with our organization. So I can remember, I told you guys somewhere along the way that my daughter worked for Disney World for a couple of years, and one of the first things that they taught them were cultural diversity issues, things that they were never allowed to do. In Disney, if you ever watch any of the Disney employees, you'll know that they never point. Like if you asked, where's the roller coaster, you can't just point. They learn to show their hand like this. So if you ever watch any of those employees in Disney, you'll notice that they use their entire hand to point, not just their fingers, because it's considered very rude to point to many, many cultures. So, and there are lots of things that, being an hour late, I never really, I would have thought that would have been rude, but instead, and what about if you compliment cultures, an item, they feel obligated to give it to you. So that's really weird. So if you do go to another culture, whether it's for business or pleasure, it would probably behoove you to take a look at some of the cultures before you go over there and get yourself in hot water by doing something that you didn't understand was rude or an insult to them. So I just thought that was a nice little way to open up the class, the chapter for today, because most of us are not aware of these things at all, okay? And I suppose people from other countries could come here and do some things that would offend us as well. So we need to make sure there are some communication, some study ahead of time before we get going with that. Okay, any kind of business activity. Okay, let me share the screen again and get to our PowerPoint. Okay. Get to the PowerPoint first and then. I think I have it where it will actually show the PowerPoints once I share the screen. Okay, you all have the PowerPoint or not?
Yes.
Okay, good, good. All right. Again, we're talking about communicating, just like we've been talking all semester, since that's our class in the context of businesses, but this time we're going to look at the cultures. The objectives for this chapter is focused on the concept that were brought up by the author. First of all, the concept of cultural intelligence, and then we will look at some ideas of business etiquette and some other things other than just culture that can make a difference in communication. All right, so first up will be the characteristics of cultural intelligence. Then we'll talk about cultural dimensions, business etiquette, and workplace differences. CQ, cultural intelligence, is a measure of your ability to work with and adapt to members of other cultures. Just like we had that emotional intelligence last week, now we have a cultural intelligence measure. How's y'all sound over there? Is it too loud or too soft?
Perfect.
Wonderful. So what is culture? Okay, culture is shared values, norms, rules, behaviors of a certain group of people who share some kind of common history and common communication system. You can have a national culture, you can have a culture within your organization, you can even have a team culture. I can definitely tell you 3 examples there. Obviously national, I'm an American. We have an American culture, okay? Things like red, white, and blue mean certain things to us, okay? Organizational cultures. Okay? For about 10 years, I worked for a company that was part of the Bell system. For those of you who don't remember that, it was the primary telephone companies across the United States. We worked there, and the people who all worked there seemed to have the same sort of norms and values, so much so that they would say, "Oh, you've gotten that bell-shaped head." Okay, so we all sort of thought similar. Team cultures, of course, there are many, many kinds of teams. Sports teams are one of them. I will tell you this, I'm a Hokie through and through, and I do have maroon and orange running through my blood, so I definitely have cultural norms and things at being a member of Virginia Tech's teams. So if you are highly culturally intelligent, that means that you respect, you recognize, and appreciate cultural differences. You have curiosity about other cultures and interest in them. You don't use stereotypes. Your conceptions can be adjusted of time, okay? and you show patience. Language differences that exist are managed in order to share meaning of words. You understand cultural dimensions. You establish trust and show empathy across cultures. You have a learner mindset. We talked about learner mindset last week. You have a learner mindset as you approach cross-cultural work relationship. And you do tend to build a co-culture of cooperation and innovation. So you don't approach business settings with different cultures in a negative manner. You do it in a positive manner, and in a manner in order to broaden your own learning as well. Okay, so respect and recognition of other cultures is a foundation for cultural intelligence. Again, we have dealt with respect a lot in a whole chapter in the very beginning there. Respecting other cultures is what we're talking about specifically here. So you view those cultures as being legitimate, having valid views and approaches to managing business and workplace relationships. Diversity has been a hot topic in a lot of situations, especially in education. Diversity just means that you have a presence of many cultural groups in the workplace. And again, we talked about that last week, where you should embrace diversity, because in the team sense, we talked about team communication, we have different viewpoints. More viewpoints can result in better decisions. Business professionals with high cultural intelligence will embrace diversity as a moral imperative and as a means to achieve higher performance. If you have a group, a business organization made up of people who all think exactly alike, then you're not going to have a variety of suggestions, answers, proposals, that sort of stuff. So diversity can help you actually be more profitable in a business. So you guys, you're at a point in your life when you can start embracing these other cultures, and some of the suggestions are, as our author said, study abroad if you can. Learn another language. Develop friendships with international students that might be on campus, and we do have some international students come through sometimes. And take an interest in culture and learn about it. As I said, there's a lot about culture and diversity being presented in the news media today as well. Watch films, television, documentaries, news, videos of different cultures. Follow the business culture of a country. The author had the opportunity to go and work in China. I am sure that was invaluable to him, because China is quickly becoming the dominant country in our business world now. Make friends with people who live in other cultures. You can communicate online very easily with them now. I know I play a couple games on social media, and sometimes I'll get friend requests from names that make me believe that these people actually reside in foreign countries, and they sometimes behave differently in certain situations, and I embrace that, because it gives me a wider framework of people to work with. Avoiding inappropriate stereotypes. Okay? Some of us tend to think of certain cultures in ways that are not necessarily true for every individual in that culture. There may be some similarities, but the tendency to assume that everyone has those same norms and values is something you want to avoid. And we don't want to presume that members of other groups are all the same. They're not, for sure. Now this is the beginning of several slides that we're going to look at that I found to be quite interesting. This is how members of various cultures feel about Americans, what their perceptions are. So our Canadians, the top line there, they think that we are hardworking people. Americans are hardworking. We are inventive people, okay? But they don't feel like we're honest. They feel like we are greedy and rude, okay? The ones that are in the shaded boxes there are negative things, and the ones in the white boxes are positive things. China doesn't believe we're very hardworking. Exactly the opposite. Okay? We are inventive, but we're not honest, and we are greedy. France, interesting. France has pretty good value on our hard-working, but falling down on the greedy thing again. Germany, India, Jordan, the Netherlands, Russia. Russia doesn't believe we're honest. What would you think about Russians? Think Russians are very honest? Some of these go both ways, you know. Spain and the UK. UK, that's England. I found that interesting that they think we're rude. I would say that probably goes both ways there. We have some perceptions about the British that says that they are uppity or rude or whatever. But
It's interesting because our exposure is so limited, you know, on all ends. It's our exposure is usually through entertainment or media.
Absolutely. That's why I think that the author was so adamant about if you can, take the opportunity to actually go abroad and immerse yourself in these cultures, because you'll find that they're totally different than what the media always presents them. I mean, as far as the UK goes, we've just been exposed to a ton of media regarding the royal wedding. So we might have the perception that everyone there is like that. But I dare say there's only a small percentage that actually are like the royal family in England. Okay. People that do have high cultural diversity and intelligence, they do show patience. They understand that tasks are going to take longer when you're working across cultures, because you're going to need a little more time to actually cooperate and understand each other. So they're patient people. There will be language differences, even between the United States and England. We have language differences because they speak the same words, that they have different meanings, or they have different accents and so on. You need to avoid judging people that have a limited ability to communicate in your own language. You need to articulate and slow down in your speaking. Avoid slang words and jargon. I can remember as far back as high school for me, which was a long time ago, we had an international student come, and he was a nice, cute fellow. He was trying to ask one of my friends out on a date. And she was trying to communicate with him. She was being very nice, but she used the phrase, how come, instead of why. And he could not process how come. That's kind of a slang way to say why, do something. So, how come we're going to the movies, instead of why are we going to the movies. He couldn't process that at all. Give people time to express themselves. If they're from another culture and they're having to translate words from one language to another, it may take them a while to actually express themselves. If you absolutely need it, use interpreters. Don't be ashamed about that, because it's better to get the message correctly and use a little extra time than it is to misinterpret something. Anybody in the classes speak more than one language?
Yeah.
Nobody?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, you do? What do you speak?
German.
Okay. That
I speak a little Spanish, little Spanish.
I'm pretty good at French and reading it, but I'm not so good at understanding when someone's talking to me. I have to like really say slow down so I can translate in my mind. And I've always regretted that I did not learn another language, because I feel like it's a part of my brain that's just sitting there that should be filled up with a lot of information that's not there. So again, I would highly recommend learning another language as being something that would get you in the door of a lot of businesses these days. Definitely. Okay, we're going to look at cultural dimensions. Okay, dimensions are fairly permanent and enduring sets of related norms and values. We're going to look at country by country, how some countries have history embedded in the way that they deal with things. We're going to look at 8 different dimensions: individualism and collectivism. It's most often when you see 2 words like that, they're opposites of each other, so we'll see both sides of those. Egalitarianism and hierarchy, again, opposites. Performance orientation, future orientation, assertiveness, humane orientation, uncertainty avoidance, and gender egalitarianism. So we're going to look at different cultures that tend to be more one way or another. All right. So these are just fascinating to me. First of all, individualism is where you have a mindset that puts a higher priority on being independent rather than interdependent. Interdependent means you work with each other, you're watching each other before you make your own decision. So individualism is where you emphasize your individual goals over your group goals. And you value the fact that you have a choice more than an obligation. And over on the right-hand side, you'll see a spectrum that goes from individualism at the bottom to collectivism, which is more of a group type thing, and certain countries in there. You see that the United States is tending towards the individualism rather than collectivism, where China is way up there on the collectivism. Okay, so United States, Americans, we value our independence, our ability to make our own decisions. Where China, almost completely opposite, they do things for the good of the entire organization or the entire country or group or whatever. And in between, you see other countries that you might be familiar with. Collectivism, again, is the opposite. That's where interdependence or group goals are going to be more important. So, again, a spectrum there of collectivism. And the U.S. is kind of right there in the middle of this one. So, kind of really confused between the two charts. It's like this one sort of ought to be the opposite of the other one, but that's the way the research is there. So if you are a member of a culture that has high individualism, like apparently most American organizations are, then you want to talk about how an individual can get rewards and achieve goals. You want to look at opportunities and choices. Spend less time in group decision making. You don't socialize a lot with colleagues outside of work. Your networking skills are more loosely tied together. And you communicate directly to efficiently deal with work tasks and outcomes. On the other end, the high collectivism, like China, they're more interested in group rewards and goals. You want to talk about those. Emphasize your duties and responsibilities, your obligations. Spend more time in group decision making. Socialize with your work people outside of work. Network in tightly knit networks and communicate indirectly to make sure all the relationships remain harmonious. So you can kind of judge yourself which one of these appeals to you. Are you the typical American that values individual rewards and goals, or are you more on the other side where you are looking at group results? Yeah, I think, again, you can tie a lot of this into history. Think about when the United States was trying to achieve its independence, right? They wanted to be able to individually do things back in our days of the revolution and so on.
Amen.
All right. Egalitarian cultures. When you have a culture that is egalitarian, if you look at that word, it sort of looks like equal. That's where people distribute and share power evenly. There's a minimum amount of status differences. There are not many special privileges and opportunities for people just because they have higher authority. Okay, let's take a look at which countries fall where. Okay, the U.S. is fairly egalitarian, whereas Korea, France, the UK, I would think, obviously, with their royal monarchy, who has special privileges, is follow more a hierarchical culture. With hierarchies, people expect power differences. They follow their leaders without questioning them. And they feel comfortable with their leaders receiving special privileges and opportunities. And that's clearly not the United States now, right? We question everything those with power do. We don't believe anybody deserves any special privileges. So, assuming that we're more of an egalitarian culture, our decision making needs to be done throughout the organization, not centralized with one person who has a lot of power or one board that has a lot of power. The protocol is less important, okay, whereas other countries that are hierarchical insist that you use their titles, seating arrangements based on status. Subordinates in our egalitarian economies can speak more openly with leaders, even if they're disagreeing, whereas other countries, it would be really, really bad to argue with someone who was your boss. Subordinates in America, which is primarily egalitarian, they do not take responsible for the mistakes of their leaders. The boss screwed up, well then the boss is responsible for it. But in hierarchical cultures, the subordinates will take blame for their leaders so that their leaders can always be presumed to be really good. We approach our leaders directly. In hierarchical cultures, we have those subordinates have to go through intermediaries to actually talk with our leaders. All right, are you performance oriented, either high or low performance orientation? That deals with the extent that you are encouraged to have innovation, high standards, performance improvement, and you get rewards for those. The U.S. is pretty high up on the list there. It's important for us to get rewards and constantly improve things, where we see Italy totally being in the opposite direction. So we do high performance as Americans. We emphasize results more than relationships, okay? The other, Italy, emphasizes relationships more than results. We like measurable goals. We like feedback. We talk a lot about money. We value statements of accountability from individuals, and we expect people to communicate quickly to us. We have deadlines on a lot of things. Other countries just deal with goals and objectives casually. Feedback is considered to be judgmental. They don't quantify everything in financial terms. They like loyalty and sympathy to be expressed. And they show more of a relaxed view of time. And they view overemphasis on deadlines as being pushy. And we're going to look at a case after break that hones in on the urgency in communications and some differences in culture as well. Okay, future-oriented, high or low, that looks at how much a culture is willing to give up their current wants in order to get their future needs. All right, USA, just a little bit on the future orientation side. Italy, again, is a low future orientation. So high future orientation would really focus in on the control and planning, intrinsic motivation. They look at long-term strategies, flexible language, long-term rewards, a kind of a visionary approach. We've seen lots of things in business management indicate that the U.S. needs to become more future-oriented. We weren't that high up on the list, so we're leaning in that direction, but we still tend to value current over the future.
We're number 5 on the list. I think we're doing okay.
You think we are?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, good, good. I see that. I see that.
We're doing better than Italy, okay?
Yeah, we are. I'll do that. But I still see that we have some desire to satisfy immediate needs from executives.
Absolutely.
Because executives want the stock to go up on their company, or they want profits up right now so they can get a big bonus, rather than thinking about what they have to do for the long term. So I think I see the folks that are lower than executive level moving more and more towards that long-term focus. But little tiny ways to go with the executives for sure. How about assertiveness? How assertive? The U.S. is deemed to be highly assertive. That's dealing with confrontation. Okay? Whereas Japan, China, down there on the other end where they don't like confrontation at all. So high assertive cultures, they want you to speak directly to me. Tell me what you mean. Don't beat around the bush. They are uncomfortable with silence, and they'll start talking if they are met with a long period of silence. They want to resolve issues. They don't care about showing a lot of respect to people. They're emotional. They use tough language. They use competitive language. And they don't want you to hold back anything. Okay? Tell me what you want to say. But the low assertive cultures, they, you can beat around the bush all you want to. Silence is respectful. Respect is higher up over resolving an issue. Typically, they express less emotion. They use pleasant language. They stress equality, and they value things that are measured and disciplined expressions of thoughts and feelings. You can kind of think of that. I mean, when I think of China, I do think low assertive, right? They're all about respect. They respect their elders. Women have to respect their men, that kind of stuff. They're very different from us. All right, humane orientation, high or low, that's the degree to which the society rewards people for being fair, altruistic, friendly, generous, caring, and kind. Okay, we're pretty high up there.
Yeah, see?
Yeah, moving there towards China, Japan there again. Germany. Germany really doesn't about being fair or friendly. Is that true? You're the German person.
My brother's wife just emigrated here from Berlin.
Oh, okay. So do you feel that she has some norms and values that are different than those of us in the United States?
Actually, she's quite the opposite, which is really interesting. I think that's why she's always wanted to come here.
She felt a yearning to come to where her cultures were more valued, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
a lot of military people have spent time in Germany, and I've heard mixed opinions about the cultural differences there as well. So, of course, it depends a lot on whether we're in any kind of war times or not. I think the culture changes a lot when we're actually fighting a war. And I also think the military has its own culture, which may influence that some. So highly humane countries or cultures, they like to greet people, welcome them, express concern. They talk about their feelings, they volunteer a lot, they smile. But we saw already in the signs, I can't remember that video, which country it was, and if you smile, that means you think somebody's stupid. I don't remember which one that was.
Korea?
That was Japan.
Or Japan or something.
And I'm probably walking around smiling at everybody, so please don't all think I think you're stupid.
That was Korea.
Yeah, I just was taught to smile. So that's the way it goes. Of course, the non-humane are not going to do that smiling or welcome gestures very often. All right, uncertainty avoidance. That's how members are meant to feel when things are uncertain or surprising or extraordinary. Not as many countries rank there. U.S. is a little bit towards the bottom there. We like low uncertainty in situations where Germany and China are taught how to deal with uncertainty.
Their history.
Okay, so high uncertainty avoidance. Want to have lots of legal contracts and keep good records with things and have lots of policies and rules and written communication, formality going on, low uncertainty. You rely on people's words. Don't necessarily have to have a contract for everything. Okay? Oral communication is just as good as written. Okay. Now, many cultures handle the division of the roles between men and women very differently. That's called gender egalitarianism. Okay? Men and women are treated very different. If you have high egalitarianism, that means that men and women have equal opportunities. They can have same communication management styles. They don't have anything that really draws attention to them being one or the other. Whereas low gender egalitarianism is going to provide more professional leadership opportunities with men. They expect men and women to communicate in masculine and feminine ways. And they like protocol that draws attention to the gender. Guess it's where the U.S. falls? They don't even show us, do they? There we go. No, that's trust. Okay, so they avoided that question very well, didn't they? All right, so what they're saying is if you want a cross-cultural work relationship, you need to get that trust involved, show empathy, make sure you're using your learner mindset, being cooperative as well. Perceptions of trust. High trust societies, well, we're fifth on the list, and low trust we see Brazil, France, Mexico, Spain. Fair play. Okay? We in the United States expect fair play. We do. Don't treat me differently than somebody else. That's the way we think. Italy, France, and Germany, they don't even expect that. All right. So with that learner mindset that we talked about, you will realize that other cultures have unique types of approaches to problem solving and making your companies profitable. The judger mindset is often called ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism. That's the belief that your culture is superior. Okay? And of course, the most ethnocentristic person in history is usually referred to as Hitler, because Hitler believed that the white male was superior to all other ethnicities and so on. All right, so this is just some more examples there about things that you should and shouldn't do, etiquette type things. Some of them we saw in that little video in the very beginning about what time to be at dinner, and in Brazil, this shows you don't talk about politics, poverty, crime, security, deforestation, and corruption. It's a conversation. Like, don't use titles except in formal situations. Formal business attire is important. Stylish, fashionable. Dress should be feminine for women. Don't go in there with a pantsuit on. Gifts are generally not expected on the first meeting. You see a lot of folks buy meals for each other. So that's Brazil. Now look at Russia. It's okay to talk about politics in Russia, okay? But don't talk about your personal life, your religion. Don't compare Moscow and St. Petersburg or to other developing countries. Deals are often used to finish a deal. Don't touch each other. Only greetings and handshakes. Brand name expensive suits. Don't call anybody by their first name unless you've already established a good relationship. And gifts are appreciated. Cheap gifts should be avoided. Good gifts include chocolate, dessert items, and fine wine.
To Russia.
If I can pretend like I'm Russian, y'all can bring me any of those. I love chocolate, dessert items, and fine wine, so bring them on. Bring them on.
I'm so hungry right now.
All right, India. Okay, to talk about your personal life and politics, but don't talk about religion. Let's see, dining, meals are important. People stand closer to one another than they do in North America. Interesting. Men wear suits and ties except in warmer climates. Women, I don't know what that is, stalwart suit. We have to look that one up. Use titles unless directed otherwise. Giving a gift is a sign of friendship. Expensive and leather gifts should be avoided.
Do you know why?
Because leather comes from cows, right?
Why?
And cows are revered by the Indian people. Exactly right.
And I think they're delicious.
I don't know, well, expensive, I guess they don't want anybody to see their caste system that they have. They are very much for a certain social status and so on. China. Don't talk about Taiwan when you're in China. Dining is extravagant meals and banquets. Toasting is an important part of the meal. Handshakes and slight bows during greetings. Touching is rare. People sit side by side rather than facing one another. Interesting. Conversation style is kind of reserved. Business dress, conservative suits. You don't wear bright colors and no high heels. I'm assuming they're talking about the women, not the men. Use titles. Gift giving is common in first meetings. Gifts should be presented with two hands. Interesting. I know when we have political figures go to foreign countries, they have to be briefed on all of these cultural things before they do something wrong. Sometimes they come up in the news as well. A different identity can impact your communication. So if you're part of a certain generational group or a certain gender, which is male, female, or other group identities, it can mean different things. Find yourself here. Are you a member of a traditionalist, the boomers, the Gen X, Gen Y, or Gen Z groups? Now, I'm a baby boomer. I'm the second one. I'm right in the middle of that group there. So, people born between 46 and 64, we're moving towards retirement age. So our goals might be different than someone born in the Gen Z. We have any Gen Zs born in 2000 or later? That would make you 18.
My daughter.
My parents, well, my mother especially, was part of the traditionalist. They took a lot of pride in their organization, of their generation. They were the ones that lived through world wars and all that kind of stuff. They took a lot of pride. So they really, at this point, most of those are beyond retirement age. So by generation, you can see that we have baby boomers, Gen X, and Gen Y occupying the American workforce. Okay, not the same in other countries, different generations. So if you're working with someone from a different generation, focus on the person, recognize that there are similarities, but pay attention to preferred approaches and observe appropriate formality and attire. All right, so since the workplace is made up of boomers, Gen X, and Gen Y, look at their strengths or weaknesses. The numbers are the percentage of respondents who agree that people in those generations exhibited those traits. And boy, oh boy, the tech savvy. Okay? If I got to figure out how to do something technologically, I turn to my 28-year-old daughter. Okay? Y'all see me struggle up here with things, but I can learn it. It just takes a while. I'm not as adaptable. You know, the older people get, they get a little more set in their ways. We don't value diversity as much as Gen X and Gen Y. Too old to be enthusiastic about much more.
Hey!
I guess we just.
Present company accepted, okay?
Right. Oh, I assumed I was the only boomer in the class, so.
No, baby.
Gen X's and Gen Y's are more entrepreneurial and you're ready to go out there and start your own businesses and so on. The one that gets me is the one that says entitled and concerned primarily about individual promotion. I think that one gives me more concern because Gen X and Gen Y generations tend to think that they are entitled to stuff. They don't have to earn it. That's not everybody. Obviously, you can see that, whereas boomers had to earn their way. Brand ambassadors, that means that we support certain brands. Okay, you all are likely to do that. All right. Got some more here. Collaborating, lacking relevant experience, relationship builder, flexibility, communication skills. Now look at there. Gen Y has a lot less communication skills. Any guess why?
iPhone.
Yeah, y'all have learned to communicate without verbal communication. Gen Ys have done everything by texting or social media to the point where they don't know how to communicate very clearly face to face. Not very good at decision making. Gen Y. You want to know why? Because mom and daddy did everything for it. Gen Y. They didn't have to make decisions. Mom and daddy did it for them. I'm talking in broad stereotypes. Y'all know that. I'm not talking about any one person, but yeah. Those are typically, and this is based on a survey, I'm sure, so there's some validity behind that. Gender differences, there are still differences in the way men and women communicate. Let's face it, we all know that. Women are from Venus, men are from Mars, right? I mean, that just says we are different. We are different. Women are more relationship-oriented. They collaborate with people, where men tend to be more independent and competitive. Holy cow, what is this trying to say? Men in individualistic cultures, women in collective culture. I don't know, that was too complicated. We don't get that. All right. Women's speech patterns. We like to ask questions. We apologize. We share credit. We give feedback. We avoid opposition. We're indirect to subordinates, and we compliment. Okay? So use these speech patterns professionally, purposely, and if you have some certain biases yourself, do your best to overcome them. All right, other than we have male and female differences and country differences, regions will have different cultures. People from urban, suburban, and rural areas, ethnic groups, occupational groups, companies. I mean, let's face it, here in the United States, people from Halifax, Virginia, behave culturally different than those from Washington, D.C. See? I do. We talked earlier about food differences. Remember what's sweet tea? Sweet tea is a southern thing, right? You go up north and ask for sweet tea, they'll look at you crazy, or they'll hand you some unsweetened in a packet of sugar. Okay? Urban and rural act differently. People from out in the country in Halifax County behave differently from Richmond, right? There are cultural differences there. Different occupational groups behave differently. We have professionals behaving culturally differently than blue-collar workers in factories. So just the main point of all of this is that you need to recognize that there are differences, and rather than saying you're wrong and I'm right, what you want to do is embrace that and use it as a tool for helping your business. So there's your takeaways again, your characteristics of cultural intelligence, all those dimensions there, some business etiquette things, and how it can actually affect your workplace. So embrace diversity, embrace cultural differences, recognize them, because it can make a difference in how you communicate in your businesses. All right, so let's take our break. We'll come back and look at our video. Let's see, I've got, Peter says 3:13. Come back about 3:35, something like that. And we will look at the video and see what we've learned out of this chapter. And then don't let me forget, we need to talk about the test as well. Okay? To the right place. Okay, does everybody see, it says demonstrating cultural intelligence on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, we're going to look at a little video case that involves Americans communicating with a person from India. Okay. Indians are generally high in collectivism. Americans are high in individualism, so we've got some conflict there. Indians are high in hierarchy. They recognize a lot of status levels and that sort of stuff, where Americans are more egalitarian, so they're more, everybody should be treated equally. Both Indians and Americans are medium to high in looking towards the future. Indians are low in assertiveness, whereas Americans are a little high in assertiveness. Indians are higher in humane orientation. Americans are considered very high. They're both high in performance orientation. So we're going to see some communication going on between three individuals. Janet is the director of communication. She's leading a video conference. So these people are not sitting together in a room. They are actually, one is in India and the other two in America, and they're using a video conference. Jake, that's the fella in the green shirt there. So those two are the Americans, and this one is a programmer, and she's the one shown on the screen there. So let's take a look at what this video has, and then we'll go back and see where there might have been some difficulties in communicating simply because of cultural differences.
Good morning, Sanjita. How are you in New Delhi? It's early, I know. Okay, I'm fine. Okay, I'm here with Jake Sims in the office, and you guys can say hello to each other. Okay, let's cut to the chase here. I have hired both of you for your professionalism, your expertise, and this project is way behind. We're 3 months behind and the pressure is on. Okay, we need to come to terms. You don't agree with him about certain things. Jake doesn't agree with you. We need to discuss this and.
Well, the primary problem I think is communication. I'm trying to communicate with the process step by step, but when I send her email, she doesn't respond. Like, for example, I sent her an email last week, I haven't heard back from her yet. That is what's slowing us down.
I appreciate how many emails you sent me. You actually sent me too many with only 2 lines on them, saying something like about feel that then the next one was saying something about another field.
It wouldn't be too many emails. It wouldn't be too many emails if you were responsible for that, but then we could begin a dialogue, a communication, and we could finish this project.
I'm going to finish this project too.
It doesn't seem like it.
So if you give me the direction to lead, I will have it done. Just tell me the 3D mapping that you need, it will be done.
These emails, I'm sharing with you inspiration. You know, we are simply trying to have our customer feel like a family. You know, when they come to our website, I want them to feel like they're coming into a chocolate store. You know, like it's a Mohammedan chocolate. And it is so delicious to them that they just must have this chocolate at home. Do you understand what I'm saying? I mean,
I think our customer is smarter than that. It's not regarding sofa like
it's not about intelligence, it's about love. Do you not love chocolate? Who does not love chocolate?
I love chocolate, I buy it every day. I do not buy a sofa every day. I don't put that sofa.
Wait. You're not getting the vision. You're simply not getting it. She's not getting the vision.
Okay, but the vision changes every day.
Well, I don't like that. I don't like that. That's not getting us anywhere.
Are you expecting to respond when you yell at that?
I'm not yelling.
Okay, Sangeeta.
Yes.
Okay, we need to know what you need us to give you to complete the job. It's as simple as that. Very clear. Okay? Okay? We're not taking sides here. We just need to get down to the nitty-gritty, okay? So let's try to be really clear about what you need.
Because I need to know exactly like what kind of buttons you would like on that first page, where you would like the customer to go from page to page. It
should be up to the customer when they go from page to page. It should be up to the customer.
Okay. I don't think we're understanding how to do this. Okay? Jake, that's on his level of expertise. Okay? So can you explain to him a little bit about how the page needs to be laid out?
This is why I requested a web designer at the beginning, so that they have this kind of expertise to just get this part done. I'm doing the programming of what is designed.
Okay, Sangeeta, there is no web designer. We do not have a budget for this. You know this, okay? We're totally capable. We just need to get down to the specifics of what you need from Jake to do this, or explain to him a site map and how a site map is laid out. Okay?
Okay. Basically, it's each page exactly what you'd like it to look like, not just this field, but also where you would like buttons to be for navigating the time while they're shopping, and you know, where you want certain information, certain text to be on any given page.
Well, I just wanted to be where it would be easy, you know, for the customer to use. Just put it out there, and you know, to the side.
Which side?
That's you already how we want it to look. But it's very important, like I said, that the customer be able to go to anywhere on our website from any place on our website. I think that's critical. So have you ever had somebody come to your home and they love your home so much that they go and they buy a piece that you have in your home, a piece of furniture, a piece of artwork? That's what I want. Like I said, just warm. That's the word. Warm. That was my last email, actually. Warm.
Okay, I think that what we need to do at this point is get the visuals really clear from Jake to you. Do you agree?
I agree.
Okay, so Jake.
I feel like I've given her enough of this part, you know, and I hate to limit the creative process. I think that's the most important part.
But how about if you just really kind of set up the page, which shots you want on that page, okay? Like really kind of lay it out for her, and then she'll do all the buttons and all the.
For example, if the first page the customer comes to when they come to the website was a beautiful home, the home photo I sent you, you know, the outside home, and the end was the doorknob. You know what I mean?
Okay, but maybe you can actually lay this out for her and email it or something, you know, send a disc.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I can do that.
Okay, so when can you do that?
But it's tough, I guess, because what do you want me to put? Just like 4 buttons on the left, and
No, let her do the buttons. I'm just saying as far as the photos, right, Sangeeta?
Yes.
She posted about buttons and things of that nature. I mean, I believe that should be her job.
She needs to see the actual shots, some of the shots they have. Just give her one page as an example. And she can have all the shots in the database.
Is that true? I mean, you can do that?
Yes, I can.
I think she needs some visuals. I think the words, the communication, the language, whatever, is a little difficult here. I think we need to focus more on visuals. And you're the king of that.
Right?
Okay?
Okay, so I'll send the intro photo.
Okay.
I'll send that, and I will even email you the background color.
That's a beautiful thing. That's great. That helps you, right?
Yes, and then we will work from there, and I will have a template for you by the end of the next business week.
Is that soon enough?
Could you possibly do it by, if you have it to me by Thursday, that would be better. That way, if you're making adjustments, you have the weekend to work on it.
Is that doable?
I have ready to go to
A what?
a wedding. My fourth cousin is getting married.
Okay, so listen, I understand that in India, the family is very close and there's a lot of things to do, but.
And they have long these weddings. They got long.
1 week.
Oh, no. We need to get this project done, okay? This is a job, you've been hired, and you're getting paid very well to do this, okay? You might not be able to go to this wedding sometime, I'm sorry, but we're 3 months from month. Okay? All right, are you okay with that?
I will do my job.
Excellent. Okay, so Sangeeta and Jake, I think that we're making really good progress. Okay, it's getting late. I think we can do this. I think it's a great team. I think you both are awesome. And that's why I hired you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you enjoy your day, and we're going to sleep.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
All right.
Bye, Sangeeta.
Bye, Jake.
Talk tomorrow.
Yeah, what's he talking about the chocolate, huh?
And they have the same thing as you do. Oh, wait, so naked.
You get the screen squared away and we will. Start talking.
Wow.
All right. So I just drew some conclusions myself, thinking that not all of their communication problems were simply because one was from one country and one was from another, although a lot of them.
None of it was.
I think well, I don't know, the wedding thing. Wedding thing's definitely a cultural difference and how important the family was. But tell me what your thoughts. What your thoughts were. What do you think the problems were? Do you think they're going to be able to get over them?
I think there was the way he was communicating to her, he was communicating in visual pictures. That's not the way she communicates or was receiving it very well at all. So I just got a feeling there was a breakdown right there. Her job was to program it, and he was trying to explain to her the vision he had, which she doesn't operate that way. So, and I like the way the lady who was facilitating it a little bit kind of worked it out with him. I thought it was kind of rude for her to bring up, oh yes, I'm in India with the whole wedding. I thought that was really rude of her to even bring that up. Because there are people in the United States who going to a wedding is important. And I think human beings are, so.
Oh, he was talking in class, talking about the chocolate and stuff. Y'all, she just wasn't getting it, was she? just bought chocolate every day. Oh, why she didn't get it? That's just not their method of communicating. I think there they must have more defined lines about what the job entailed.
Mhm.
He really was expecting more from him, and he was expecting her to do stuff. Right. Okay. All right. How do you think the supervisor, the boss, how was she doing as far as communicating? You see any techniques she was using? She really didn't choose one over the other, did she? She did a lot of compliments. Did you know, this is why I brought you together. I hired you because you're good, you're capable of doing this, and so on. All right, let me see if I can.
And she totally blew it. At the very end, I think she totally blew it with that girl. I would be very surprised if she continued working on the project, because the way she just shut her down with her desire to go to the wedding.
And I thought it was rude. They kind of like made fun of her, like they were like laughing at her, and you could tell, like you could see the disappointment on her face, and they were just like, "Yeah, you can't go. You have to do your job." And then they asked her, like, really didn't give her an option, but then kind of had the nerve to be like, "So are you gonna do the job?" And she kind of had to say yes.
You're right. You're right. I agree. She was really kind of put down there at the end about her importance of family and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, then they like laughed and made fun of her, and then they made
It's just acknowledging that it's important, you know.
Right.
There's ways that you can verbalize that to her. But I mean, it's so clear to me that he was coming from a very artistic perspective, and the programmer on the other end, which she's a programmer. It's very clear, with kind of a clear idea of what he wants. So who's taking the artistic?
Right. Okay. Well, let's look at these questions here real quick and see if we see anything that causes any problems for us. Janet, as the supervisor, she starts the conversation by saying, let's cut to the chase here. I've hired each of you for your professionalism and expertise, and this project is way behind. That's definitely assertive that she's carrying forward there. She's being very assertive. Let's see here. Jake complains that the primary problem is communication because Sanjita has not responded to his many emails over months. Jake's complaint shows that he most lacks what element of cultural intelligence? His patience, right?
Right.
Okay, remember, apparently in Sanjita's culture, they don't respond real well to deadlines, and you got to get it, respond to an email right away, that kind of thing. Whereas Americans, if I send an email to somebody, I expect somebody to get me a response pretty quick. You don't think that's true? Try being a teacher and get an email from a student and don't respond to them immediately. Even if it's midnight, they expect a response in America.
And I would naturally assume if I had sent that many emails to somebody and hadn't gotten a response, for some reason, they may not be understanding me.
Yeah, you would think, that's right.
Maybe there's some kind of...
Jake complains about Sanjita saying she's not getting the vision. I don't like the attitude. Which of the following phrases best characterizes how that statement would be interpreted? And that was a pretty rude statement to both groups, right? I mean, yeah. Americans would think that statement was rude, and so would the Indians. All right, Janet's a supervisor to both Sanjita and Jake. She's also acting as an intermediary to bridge their differences. The approach may be particularly effective in Indian culture due to hierarchy. The hierarchy establishes certain levels, and the Indian culture recognizes that she's a supervisor and that's what she's like. It's evident that Janet, Sanjita, and Jake are each interested in doing good work. They discuss achieving good results and they want to get things done in a timely manner. The dimension for that is a performance orientation. Sanjita mentions, oh, here's her week-long wedding for her fourth cousin. Janet and Jake react with laughter, suggesting she can't possibly go to the wedding for that long given the hard deadline. The actions of all three individuals is explained by which dimension? Individualism and collectivism. Okay. The individualism is interested in their results, and the collectivism is the group. That's the end of it. Okay, so these are concepts, lots of little terminology there for you. Let's talk about the test Thursday. The test is on the computer, okay? It is, let me get right back to the screen so you can see. Where it's found. It's under your assignments. It's under the week that we're in right now, week 3. So you'll go to your week 3 materials, just like you would go for your homework, and there's the test listed right there. There is no password or anything. You just click on it, okay? It's 2 hours, okay? You pay 2 hours max, okay? I don't think it's going to take you 2 hours. I think, hold on, let me see.
I'm saying, can you take it now? You have to wait till Thursday?
It's 50 questions and they're worth 2 points each.
You can take it now.
Ms. Henderson.
We have to wait till management take it, or can you take it away?
If you want to take it early, that's fine. If you want to take it at home, that's fine. You've got to have access to a computer though, okay? Now I will actually be here in South Boston if you all want to come and take it during the class time. That's fine. But you don't have to, as long as it's done by Thursday. That who doesn't want to go on vacation, whatever day. Okay, I have a deadline of the 10th on it. So,
Are we having class on Thursday, or can we stay up?
No, we are not. However, I will be here if anybody needs to contact me. The whole purpose of taking the test takes place of having your class.
Okay.
All right, and let me also make sure you understand, you may use your book, you may use your notes, but you're not going to be able to go out of the test once you start it. Okay, you can't print the test or anything like that. Once you start the test, you need to finish it, and you can't like jump back to Blackboard and look at what we said or what the PowerPoint said or something. You're going to need to have all of those with you, or your book with you, or whatever. And no help from any other human being. I don't care if your cat or dog's with you or whatever. No help from any other human being. Okay? Don't forget, however, though, that you've got that chapter 4 homework to do this week as well. So that's there. Now, what other, it's all multiple choice questions. This could be multiple choice. So anybody got any questions about the test? Emporia people, y'all gonna be okay with getting your hands on computers or whatever?
Yes.
Okay. It does not have to be proctored. Nobody has to watch you or actually look at your driver's license or anything like that.
Okay.
All right. I think that phone number that's on the syllabus, that's my personal cell phone, not to be used for anything too outrageous, but if you are in the middle of the test and have a problem, you can call me on that number, or text me. Texting is best, because I can actually look at it when I'm in the middle of a meeting or something. Okay? Please don't put it up on the bathroom. Well, I don't know. It's been a while since I've had a date. Maybe, all right. Okay. Any other questions about anything? All right. So I may not see you until next Tuesday, but please hesitate to send me an email or text me if you've got a problem with anything, and don't forget to get the test and the homework done. Okay?
Thank you.
All righty. We'll see you. Y'all have a good week.
Ms. Henderson?
Yeah.
This is Maya. I just wanted to say that when I signed up for this class, I didn't know it was a Tuesday, Thursday class. They told me it was only on Thursday, but I just found out it's on Tuesday, Thursday. So I'm just letting you know that I will be here on Tuesdays from now on. I just didn't know.
I'm sorry.
I missed the first two, and on my schedule it only says Thursday, and they told me, like, I have a class Wednesday too, and they said you would start Wednesday. So I just thought this one was only on Thursday.
Wow.
But I'll be here from now on. I just missed the first two.
You can catch up okay for anything you missed just by looking at the recordings or whatever?
Yeah, I've been doing that at home. I'm trying to catch up, but I was just letting you know that I missed the first two Tuesdays, but I'll be here from now on.
All right. Well, thank you for letting me know, and I'm sorry for that confusion.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This thing's adjusting.